Okay, so this video is about vowels as we encounter them in phonetic transcriptions. So let's just step through some of the things that come up in the textbook description of this. So first of all, they really open with a puzzler, which is this question of articulatory versus acoustic representations. We're going to revisit it, as the textbook says, when we cover chapter 10 later in the semester. Uh, but for now, it's not a bad, it's not awful to be thinking of this sort of vowel chart in the IPA as an articulatory description. Uh, that's not complete, and there's other ways to get at it, and it'll be kind of, I think it's fun when we find that, how the acoustics and the articulatory stuff, uh, they map to each other in kind of an elegant way. Another thing to keep in mind, when you're doing consonants, I always found consonants easier, and one of the reasons I think is because consonants involve a lot of constriction. So you can feel the skin on your tongue is touching stuff. Touching the sides as you get narrow constriction, or touching the full on touching the place of articulation for the stops. And so you have touch sensors, you have nerves that will tell you what's happening. But with vowel production, because there isn't any substantial constriction, you don't get that same sensory feedback about how you're producing things. So it can be harder to introspectively tell what's going on. So that's just a warning. It's okay. Something to keep in mind. And yeah, the thing that I have mentioned already, but it's worth reiterating, is that vowels are more variable across varieties of English than the consonants are. Okay, so vowels. So we're going to restate the three articulatory dimensions for vowel production: tongue height, frontness, and then lip rounding. We do get in the textbook more details on the labels tense and lax. I don't use those terms in this course. I feel that they're more a matter of describing English phonology than phonetics, so I tend to leave it peripheral to the focus of this course. But it is good to read this section because it does introduce the length distinction, and that's an important suprasegmental property. We're going to talk about suprasegmentals later in the course, but it's good to know that that's part of what's going on when we're looking at different vowels in English. They differ not just in terms of where the tongue is, but how long they're pronounced for. And we have a way of representing that in the IPA. And just one thing to point out, the textbook mentions that the indicator for length, which looks a bit like a colon but technically isn't, it is those two little triangles rather than two circles. Well, the colon is two little triangles. Now, I have been a phonetician for let's say a quarter of a century, more than that, but anyway, about that. I have yet to encounter a coherent reason why we need a separate symbol, why we need the triangular little version rather than the regular colon. Both work fine. I don't care which one you use. Although if you are using an online IPA keyboard, even the finicky technical IPA version is pretty easy to do. So I'll leave that up to you. We talked a bit about diphthongs, right? That's when you have a vowel that kind of has two distinct articulatory points, the beginning and the end point. And I have mentioned in a previous video that there are two ways to represent this. One is as a sequence of two vowel symbols, that's what's presented in the textbook, and one is as a sequence of a vowel and an approximant. Now here is the A on the left and the O on the right under those two systems. The top one has two vowels, the bottom one has a vowel and an approximant. Either is fine. As I've said before, when we talk about acoustics, we'll see just how close these things are and why the distinction between these two conventions isn't that important to me. Okay. Pick which one you like. You can go with what the textbook does for ease. You can go with the other one. Maybe you used a particular convention in your introductory linguistics. You can carry on using that if you want. You can try out a different one if you like. Okay. The textbook also distinguishes between diphthongized vowels, the A and O, and true diphthongs, the I and ow and some others, oi and whatnot. It's a useful distinction for now. That's fine. But I do want to note that there is research suggesting that even the monophthongs, the ones that don't fall into either of these categories in the textbook, have some movement built into them. There's been some fine-grained acoustic research that shows this. So the monophthong to diphthongized vowel to diphthong distinction, it's more of a continuum than a set of distinct categories. Just putting that up. Okay. So, yeah, there's one thing I know I get a little bit persnickety about this, but I think it's important to point out some of the ways that students in the past have kind of gone wrong, and to point out why I'm being persnickety about this. So what am I talking about here? This is the ash symbol, this AE digraph. Got it on the top there in green. So if you have the sound, that's your symbol. It's one symbol that combines an A and an E glyph together. It's not this. Why isn't it that? Because those are each IPA symbols, and they have their own sounds associated with them. The sound is neither of those, and it's not, you don't combine those and magically get the Okay, so if you have two separate symbols, you read that as something like I, right? It's a sequence. It's easy to get confused. One of the ways that they got up to over 100 characters, distinct characters in the IPA, is by doing some mashing of other characters together. But when two things are combined into one symbol, that is a new symbol with its own identity in the IPA, and you can't just put them in separately. Use the online IPA keyboard if you're having difficulty entering those symbols on your device. Okay, that's that little rant done. Okay. One thing, yeah, the textbook talks about the lax versions of the high vowels in English, the I and U, that they're a bit centralized compared to their tense counterparts, I and U. The official IPA way to describe this movement away from the edges is to call them lowered close vowels rather than close vowels, or like lowered high vowels. Similarly, the IPA chart has some vowels that are near the open line at the bottom, but they're not quite. So these are called raised open. And some of the resources that I've shared links for will help you find that. Those are the ones between the open line and the open midline. Okay, this section of the textbook again raises the question of syllabic R, which I have some fun ranting about that. As I mentioned in an earlier video, I'm happy with either of these representations, right? You can use the symbol that the textbook uses on the right there, sort of a backwards epsilon with that rhotic symbol, or you can use the turned R. So this is, for example, with the word bird. Yeah, I'm trying to make sure that I actually give the pronunciation rather than just the written form, right? I've heard that some people are just thinking about that. Okay, there is a convention out there, I've heard, that you should use this sort of backwards epsilon with the rhotic symbol for when this syllabic R sound is stressed, and you should use a schwa with the rhotic symbol when it's unstressed, kind of like here, bird versus other. Now, from my perspective, I think they're both fine with that turned R. Another thing that people will often do is they'll put that little tick underneath, and we'll look at that a little bit again when we talk about suprasegmentals. That just indicates that it's syllabic, meaning that's the sonority peak in that syllable. You can use that or not use that. There are phonetic differences between a syllabic consonant and a non-syllabic version of the same consonant, but we're not getting into description of that in this course, so I don't think it's really worth fussing over that. So you can use the rhoticized vowels according to that convention with stressed and unstressed. You can use the turned R on its own. You can use the turned R with the syllabic symbol. Don't use the rhoticized vowel with the syllabic symbol because that's redundant. As a rhoticized vowel, it's already sort of assumed to be syllabic. Yeah, but there's some leeway in how you transcribe that, and I think I can defend that leeway in terms of the degree of precision that I'm after in this course for your transcription work. Okay, so that is it for the consonants. We'll look at, sorry, that's it for the vowels. I said consonants because there's no R, right? So there's, next up is going to be the diacritics. So that's it for this video.